Hi, I'm Bill Faris, Christian counselor here in Orange County, California, and this is my son, Matthew.
Hey, I'm Matthew Faris. I'm Bill Faris' son.
And tonight we're going to talk about the three tunnels of adulthood.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Why is this something that's on your mind right now? And why has this been important to you recently?
Well, I really am a student of human development spiritually as well as otherwise, and I think it's helpful to have some maps,
Hmm.
some idea of what life's arc is asking of us and offering us at different stages.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk about these three stages of adulthood
Mm.
and the transitional passages between each of these stages, because if you have that in mind, then you can navigate the opportunities and challenges of each stage better.
Hmm. Okay. And so are you saying that these tunnels are the transitions between these stages?
They are, and they're not a line you step over in
Okay.
one day or one week. They're, I would think of it as like a 5 year long
Hmm.
tunnel.
Okay.
As you go into that tunnel, you're one kind of person,
Hmm.
and as you're coming out of the tunnel, you're somewhat different. That first tunnel, for example,
Yeah.
of the one that goes from adolescence
Hmm.
into young adulthood.
Hmm.
That tunnel is, let's call it 5 years
Sure.
between 18 and 23, something like that.
Typically when people are in college.
Might be in college, you might be even getting married,
Right.
or might be starting a career, or doing something that's pretty definitional
Hmm.
for your next phase of adulthood.
Hmm.
The person that starts into that tunnel and the person that comes out of that tunnel in their early 20s has changed a lot, has
Hmm.
had to learn a lot, has had to adapt a lot. And so I think of it as we understand that transition as a tunnel, and then we think about, well, what are you coming out into
Hmm.
in that early 20s and 30s passage?
Yeah.
And that's what I'd like to talk about first, is that first tunnel.
Okay. Well, why don't we start with what's before the first tunnel?
Good
Because
idea.
you got to know point A before you get to point B, right?
Right. So you're talking about adolescence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So adolescence, I believe that in each stage of life, there's a project.
Hmm.
And the project of adolescence, in my view,
Hmm.
is identity.
Hmm.
Who am I?
Hmm.
What makes me me?
Hmm.
What makes me like everybody else? What makes me different than everybody else? What's unique about me? What's the same about me as everyone? And I feel like teenagers and adolescents and early adults are trying to nail down some of those self-awarenesses and differentiations. And sometimes we call that individuating.
Hmm.
We start to develop a sense of our unique and distinctive self
Hmm.
in that first, as we go into that tunnel.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Do you feel like that's part of why teenagers can feel so hard to relate to? Like it's been your child this whole time and yet suddenly it's not?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of grown-ups, a lot of parents have trouble with the differentiation process.
Right.
And sometimes they want to hover over
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
and over influence it.
Hmm.
So there's an important thing. This is kind of a footnote for you parents out there.
Hmm.
It's important to be present in the
Hmm.
process, but it's important not to overmanage it. That young person needs to figure this out. And like all change, it's not always going to be elegant.
Certainly not in the case of teenagers,
Yeah.
notoriously inelegant beings.
Yes, and notoriously.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So you're taking individuation as a teenager and you're
yeah,
stepping into the tunnel.
right.
You turn roughly 18. Like we said, you're going to
Yeah.
college or you're
Maybe the military.
right,
Yeah.
right. Like, but you are that's our typical age of beginning independence from your parents in America. Right.
Right, right. Absolutely. And some parents are like, hurry up,
Yeah,
get
right,
through the
right.
tunnel. And other parents are like, don't hurry
Yeah.
up. Stay close to home,
I
stay.
want more time with you, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it can vary,
Yeah.
different families. But the key thing is that young person who's going into that tunnel has hopefully come to a few conclusions or at least a few reference points as to their identity,
Hmm.
what makes them who they are, so that when they say they go to college or when they start a vocation or whatever, they have some interests, they have some focal points.
Hmm.
I'd like to be headed in this direction or learning more about these things or maybe I want to move to a different state, or maybe I want to, try a different part of the country out or live overseas or whatever. But anyway, they're starting to sort of gather up a few touch points.
Yeah.
But as they move into their 20s and 30s, they have a new project. And that new project is what I call competence.
Okay.
In other words, I'm starting with identity and I'm taking that into my young adulthood. And then I got to figure out, how do I be a competent adult?
Right. Right. So you're moving from individuality to competence and identity to competence.
Yeah.
What have you seen are signals in people's life that they have crossed that threshold out of the tunnel into that competent early adulthood?
Well, they are basically learning how to be um, they're learning how to be self-sustaining.
Yeah.
They're learning how to pay their
Right.
taxes. They're
Right.
learning how to, earn a living. They're
Yeah.
learning how to, finish their studies if
Right.
they're in school and start to choose a path. They might be deciding who they're going to marry or how many children they're going to have or
Right.
whatever like
Right.
that. And so the signs of competence are the capacity to be self-determining
Yeah.
and to know how to do adult things. Sometimes people call that adulting,
Yeah. Right.
you know.
Yeah. 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 I have a very vivid memory of probably when I was 23, 24, I had bought a car from your other son, and you said, "Okay, time to get your own car insurance." And I thought, boy, I have watched a lot of sports games. I've seen a lot of car insurance advertisements. I guess it's time to remember which ones have been shown to be the most and figure out how the heck to get car insurance because this was just never something I thought about.
Right?
And that feels like a real threshold crossing of
Absolutely.
hashtag adulting.
Hashtag adulting.
Yeah.
Right. Car insurance, hashtag car insurance,
Yeah.
hashtag
That's right.
adulting.
That's right.
It's starting to sound like Jimmy Fallon right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, but the point is that that's just one symbol.
Yeah.
And there's others that where you're just becoming more and more your own person and accepting responsibility. Maybe that's the umbrella term, is that
Hmm.
as I go into my 20s and 30s, I continue to become competent at accepting responsibility for myself and for my loved ones
Yeah.
if I'm married or what have you. And I'm developing those skills and those capacities and I'm exercising them. But at some point, you don't want to just live life competently for the rest of your life. Like that's not the pinnacle of
Yeah.
living, right? So then you start to go into a second tunnel.
Hmm.
I'm going to call this somewhere at the end of your 30s or maybe the beginning of your 40s, somewhere straddling
Yeah.
that season of life right in there. And that second tunnel is the tunnel of, it's called the midlife
Hmm.
tunnel.
Hmm.
And famously, midlife crisis is almost kind of a joke
Right.
about, how people can change in sort of wacky ways
Right.
at midlife. But there's actually sort of a powerful thing that starts to happen at midlife, and that second tunnel starts to put you into a different conversation.
Hmm.
Some people say it's kind of like playing a sports like football or basketball and a halftime.
Hmm.
And you get off the court or you get off the field and you sit down and you think, how do I like how we played the first half?
Right.
Do we
Right.
want to keep doing more of that? Do we want to change it way up? Do we want to tweak a few things?
Yeah.
And so Bob Buford, his book Halftime, talks about this as sort of a midlife questioning period where you look at okay, I got competent at some stuff. I started some projects in my life. It could be started a business, could be I finished school, I'm in my career, I got married, whatever. And it's like, okay, now I'm in my 40s. I don't know, is this where I'm going to sort of sit
Hmm.
in this same kind of stream here, or do I want to change some things up? Maybe I've put some things on delay that I want to get back to now.
Hmm.
Or there's a lot of those conversations that start in that tunnel.
Hmm. Do you find it's always 40s? This feels much more nebulous of a time period than the first one, which is just so clearly linked to like separating from your parents, becoming, yeah, like a self-sustaining individual. This seems to me much harder to picture besides like jokes about midlife crisis,
Right,
right?
right.
Like what do you find are some of the things that are sparking the entrance into this tunnel?
you get some help from your body.
Okay. Okay.
Your body at 40 starts to tell you some new
Interesting.
messages about what you're capable of and
Yeah.
what you're not capable
I
of.
don't look forward to
Yeah, and I mean, it's just another phase of life,
that.
right? But in other words, it's a pretty strong signal that you can't just keep on doing things the way that you used to them. We're baseball fans and we think of like how many pitchers,
Right.
you know,
Right.
get into their late 30s and
Yeah.
40s and they realize I can't keep doing
Yeah.
this.
Right.
I love the game.
Right.
But my body's not going to let me do this very much longer,
Right. Right.
so that's just one hint of what's up, but there's more, which is at some point you get responsibilities stacked up on your plate. You get pretty good at them, hopefully, but you realize there's dreams. There's things I've had in my heart or things that I love or care about
Hmm.
that have had to sort of be put on hold
Yeah.
while I've been learning competence.
Yeah.
And now that I got competence, somewhat in hand, I don't know. I'd like to maybe get back to some things. You have an older brother
Right.
who's 45,
Right.
who just this year changed his entire career profile
Right.
from therapy into content
That's
creation
right.
and editing and so
That's right.
forth. And he's right on time.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, like, do you think that part of the competence phase entering into this tunnel is the realization that you will have to compromise on some of those dreams, and then stepping into the tunnel is a re-embracing of those?
Well, that's actually exactly what I want to talk about, which
Okay.
is you're talking about a negotiation.
Hmm.
And you're in that second tunnel, you start to renegotiate
Hmm.
your capacities,
Hmm.
your dreams, your abilities, your opportunities.
Yeah.
And I really believe that that second tunnel is a shuffling time.
Hmm.
As you go into your 40s, let's call it, you're gonna let go of some good things and take on the best things.
Interesting.
You're going to release some interesting things and take on the most interesting things. Because what you're learning is that in your 40s and 50s, your life is coming to a very interesting intersection
Hmm.
between your maturity
Hmm.
and your energy.
Okay.
So you now, for the next 20 years, I'm going to call it 40 to 60,
Sure.
you have the kind of the biggest window where you have enough energy and capacity physically and enough life experience and maturity spiritually and practically to where you can apply yourself to the best stuff
Hmm.
with all of your might for a while.
Hmm.
And so you want to get clearer and
Hmm.
clearer about what that is. And some people call this, I'm no expert in geometry, but they
Sure.
call this a sigmoid curve,
Okay.
where the the arc of your life has been going like this, and then when you get into that second tunnel, it starts to kind of dip down and backward on itself
Interesting.
as you do self-reflection and that sifting process.
Yeah.
And then as you come out of that tunnel and into your 40s and 50s, you're picking up a new arc.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like boop, and then you pick up this new arc. And so for a while, it can feel like you're going backwards or you're confused. And that's that midlife crisis thing of
Right.
like,
Right.
well, wait a minute, what's going on here? I don't know that I want to keep doing the same things the same way, but what do I do now? And what do I do? What do I prefer over other things? And some people go back to school.
Hmm.
Interestingly, I went back to school around that time to be a pastoral counselor. I got my
Interesting.
my degree in counseling around that time. Your brother, as I mentioned, changed his
Right.
whole career,
Right.
and so on and so on. And so some people do go back to school at that time, or they learn a new career, or they take a big step of change, like going onto the mission field,
Hmm.
or moving across the world somewhere, or starting a new business, or whatever. But they've been doing hopefully some sifting in the meantime
Hmm.
to differentiate between, well, what's the stuff I care about versus the stuff I really care
Hmm.
about?
Hmm. Interesting. Um, I just feel like I have so many questions that we could go in here, but um, how do you feel that children, like your own children, but not your own children like me and my brothers, but families who are raising children, how do children like, is there a certain stage that they cross that tends to trigger your entrance into this
Ah,
tunnel?
kind of depends when you become a parent, but it's a great
Sure.
question because sometimes people, like in our family's
Right.
case, your mom and I, we had our two older sons, and then we had you and your sister
Right.
many years later. In the meantime, your mother, who had a calling in nursing,
Right.
really developed her nursing career in that space, and so there's different sub projects, I'll call them, that she wanted to get more competent at nursing. She
Hmm.
was an LVN when I met her. She went back to school for a time and got her RN done and went into a special focus for her in the hospital was I want to be a labor and delivery nurse specifically,
Right. Right.
which meant she had to work nights for the first
Right.
little while just to get into the
Right.
scene there. And so there's sacrifices you make. There's things you're willing to take on, like going back to school or working nights or
Right.
starting a business or whatever.
Right.
And your children and the ages of your children will obviously affect how much risk you can take
Hmm.
on.
Yeah.
And also it affects well, let me put it this way. Whenever you go into change, you have to always be maintaining some things while you're changing other things.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. Like people that just throw everything out and just
Right.
start into a brand new,
Right.
and they're not maintaining anything and they just go crazy.
Yeah.
That's kind of the midlife crisis picture. Um,
Right.
all change requires that you keep some plates spinning while you start to
Right.
spin new ones. And so I think that by the time you're in your 40s, you might have some really important plates to keep spinning. Like you might have made financial commitments for your kids' school,
Right.
or you might have made financial commitments to a business you're starting, or you might have aging parents and you need to stay near them geographically.
Hmm.
So these are all things you have to navigate as you're going into that season. Or you might have young kids
Right.
because you may have starting, or those kids may be teenagers.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things you have to like maintain
Right.
while you're also sort of looking at different options.
Yeah, it's interesting because ultimately we're talking about broad stages on the journey of life that are typical for most people, and yet everyone will have their own atypical path through them,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
And so,
But the themes are the same.
of course, yeah, I'm not saying we
It's
shouldn't
the
support this.
themes. Yeah, no, no. So that's what I'm trying to highlight
Right.
is these projects are still kind of the same projects and the themes behind them are still the same themes, like sifting and choosing and
Yeah.
competent, all these kind of things we've been talking about. But yes, everybody will have their own blend or version of these
Right. Their
themes.
own circumstances.
Yeah,
So you say entering in this tunnel roughly in your 40s-ish
we'll call it. Yeah,
sometime.
yeah.
How long does it take to work through it typically?
Hmm. Well, I like using 5 years as
Okay.
kind of a starting place to think about that. For some people, it could take longer.
Sure.
For some people, it could be shorter. But I don't think any of these transitions are instant pudding. I think
Yeah.
they all take a little bit of time to tease out. And I think if you give yourself permission
Hmm.
to be in a tunnel rather than trying to figure out the exact line you're trying to step over, it's a lot easier. You could be a little more merciful
Hmm.
as you struggle, which you might be struggling
Yeah.
to figure out some of these things.
Yeah. Of course. Well, and we all got to be nice to ourselves here.
We do
It's quite a journey.
yes, it is. And so anyway, now, okay, we've kind of gone through that second tunnel.
Yeah.
And now maybe for the next, let's call it 20 years or so,
Okay.
40s, excuse me, 40s and 50s, heading up towards 60. Now you're in another zone. And remember that window where you got your maturity and
Yeah.
your energy crossing each other?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Your maturity, this is ideal. Your maturity is going higher, yet you're learning more wisdom.
Right.
You're gaining more understanding. If you're a Christian and you're walking with God, your spiritual life is getting more vitalized and deeper, and so forth and so on. But your energy and your capacities physically and mentally are you're going to start to feel
Yeah.
the at least the first signs of
Sure.
wear and tear.
Yeah.
And so now as you're heading into your 50s and 60s, you have to now factor in those things. And as you do that, you're going to be heading toward third transitional tunnel. I'm going to call it around 60.
Okay.
And I'm calling that the post-midlife
Okay.
transition. But like every other tunnel and every other season on the other side of a tunnel, on either side of a tunnel, there is a project for that season that follows that tunnel too, and that's legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah. And the reason why is because as you're going into your 60s and toward your 70s, you start to realize that the sun is setting on your life.
Yeah.
It's not hopefully on the
Right.
horizon
Right.
and about to dip,
Right.
but the sun is not rising on your life like when you were going through that first tunnel.
Right.
And you're thinking, oh, I got all the time in the world, I got all the options in the world, I have all this energy, I have all this excitement and all these opportunities. And so that's the sunrise of your life. The
Yeah.
midlife is the sun is sort of like peaking
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
noon, but as you head toward that third tunnel, the sun is starting to set.
Yeah.
And like if you're like me, as you know, I lost my brother,
Yeah.
who's my next older brother, 9 years older than me.
Yeah.
I've lost a number of friends
Right.
to death
Right.
and also to other disabilities.
Right.
And that didn't happen in the seconds in my midlife
Yeah.
years. That wasn't a factor.
Yeah.
I can remember very well my own father, who was 52 when I was born. So think about where he was on this journey when
Wow.
I came along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can remember hearing him talk when he was in his 60s and 70s about all of his friends who were dying. And when you're a younger person, as I was in those days, thinking like, huh, that's interesting, but I
Yeah.
didn't really pay it a lot of
Right.
mind.
Right.
Now I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, now
Right.
I get
Easy
it.
to be bold about your relationship to death when you have so much life ahead of you, right?
And that's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
So you enter into this in your 60s-ish,
yeah, we'll call it that.
another
Mm-hmm.
5-year period.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like is the signifier that you are out of that tunnel into your last stage?
Yeah, again, there could be some physical cues
Sure, sure.
of various kinds. Fortunately for me,
Hmm.
I've never been in a hospital
Right.
for any reason.
Yeah.
I've never had a heart attack or any of
Right.
those things, but
Right.
I have friends who have,
Of course.
and so forth. So your body might be sending you some new signals about what you're capable of.
Yeah.
But the other thing, though, is remember that other index ideally is still going up.
Yeah.
Your sense of what matters,
Yeah.
what is wise,
Yeah.
what's important, what you've learned,
Hmm.
and you have a little bit more of a sense of, hey, if the sun is setting and I'm kind of peaking toward my most mature life lessons, I want to make sure that I give those away, that
Hmm.
I share them with the people that I love,
Hmm.
share them with people whoever might be out there in the big wide world that might need any of them. And I let my story finish out as a sort of a lesson,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty excited about the few people that I have known that have finished out that season on in kind of a high peak form.
Hmm.
They didn't just dribble off
Yeah.
into insignificance and kind of give up on themselves and downplay whatever they've learned. There's a few people I've had the privilege of being influenced by that are recognizing that they have something important to share.
Hmm.
It may be their story itself, it may be things that they've learned, but they are committed to like, I want to pass this on.
Hmm. Hmm. And do you feel like you yourself, without giving away your age,
70 almost.
okay, all right,
I'm
we were gonna keep it a mystery.
right in that middle, right?
Right, right. So that's got to be really heavy on your mind right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And like, without spoiling anything, that's part of why we're doing this.
You're right. Well, we might as well say it.
Yeah.
We were talking one night
Right.
with your oldest brother, and I was sharing with you guys like I want to pull together some
Right.
things and make them available, and you were kind enough to go, I'll help you do that,
Yeah.
and so that's why we're here right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Is there anything else you want to say about the three tunnels of adulthood?
Yeah, there is. So the three tunnels, so that last project is legacy.
Yeah.
And I think that the word that really became important to me as I knew I was getting closer to that tunnel and then coming out the other side of it is eldership.
Hmm.
I think it's something that we don't really appreciate in the Western culture
Hmm.
the way that other cultures appreciate the elders.
Yeah.
But when I say eldership, of course, there is a biblical eldership that
Sure.
is kind of an office
Yeah.
in the church, kind of
Right.
a thing. I'm not really talking about that as much as I'm talking about the village elder.
Yes.
In the Old Testament, the elders of the land would gather at the gate of the city,
Hmm.
and they were like the judges. They would hear people's cases. They would
Right.
hear
Right.
people's complaints or concerns or decisions, and they would consult and counsel with people
Right.
by virtue of they were the village elders of their time. They
Hmm.
were the people that it was believed that they had more wisdom, they had more life experience, they had perspectives that young people couldn't have. They couldn't fake it. They couldn't play act it. That
Right.
you have the only way you can really get those goods is to live long enough and well enough
Hmm.
to develop them. So I think that this is really the case where men and women, as they age into this season of life, they really need to think of themselves as the village elders,
Yeah.
whoever their village is,
Sure. Sure.
right? And own that
Yeah.
and lean into that
Right.
and assume that if they can find the ways and means to share their life lessons and their convictions, that they should do so as best as they can, because once the sun finishes setting, your opportunities are gone.
Right. That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you feel like when you think of people who've come before you in life, the people you've looked up to, when it comes to legacy and eldership, what are the traits in that when you picture someone who's done it well? What are the traits that stand out to you?
Great question. I like the definition of leadership that is a leader is a non-anxious presence.
Hmm.
And I think that an elder
Hmm.
is a non-anxious human being.
Hmm.
In other words, my hope is that in our maturing, our spiritual maturity, our human maturity, our relationship maturity, that we're less reactive
Hmm.
and more responsive,
Hmm.
that we are less anxious
Hmm.
and more focused and
Hmm.
more thoughtful. And so I think that people that I have an elder in my life, I call him, a mentor.
Yeah.
He's 95,
Yeah.
Bob Whitaker, and he's someone I met in my 20s when I was in Bible school. He performed your mom in my first wedding. I say first wedding, our actual wedding,
Nice.
and then our 25-year later vow renewal.
That's wild.
And so he's been in my life for, I don't know, 50 years, more than 50 years,
Right.
something like that. And he's someone who, even at 95, he's pretty vitalized. He's pretty active guy
Hmm.
and pretty with it. And I've watched him as one example of what
Hmm.
it looks like to go through that deep part of that season, because not
Yeah.
everybody gets that far as he has.
Yeah.
But he's gone deep into that season and he's had some real griefs. He's lost his second wife.
Hmm.
He to cancer. He's lost two wives now to cancer over his lifetime
Hmm.
and all that. But then he has grandchildren, great grandchildren, and he has other reasons to feel like he matters. And he still hosts people in his home for prayer times and
Yeah.
for counseling and so forth. So I just think that's the kind of example that I would like to emulate.
Yeah. This non idea of a non-anxious presence as like a village or family anchor. It
Yeah.
seems that almost like this item that everyone gathers around. I don't want to call you an item, but you know
Oh no, yeah.
what I
No, and I think that we elders owe the
Yeah.
upcoming generations, even the very adult members of those upcoming generations, we owe them a non-anxious response to things
Yeah.
because they can borrow from that and they can balance their own response to life
Yeah.
because there's a lot, especially in our day when we're so flooded with information and influencers and
Yeah.
everything else. There's a lot that makes us want to react and react and
Right.
react and
Right.
react like a ping pong ball. And I think elders have the capacity to go, there's some things to be
Sure.
wound up about, maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
maybe not the things that you think
Right.
are are going to matter 5 years from now.
Right. Yeah, you drew a distinction between what was it, react and respond.
Yes.
Tell me more about that. What's the difference there?
Well, it's my favorite illustration I've come up with, I think. So your house is on fire, God forbid, and
Yeah.
you call 911,
Okay.
and this truck pulls up, and these guys come off the truck with all this gear,
Yeah.
and one of them looks at the other one and goes, "Oh my gosh, that house is on fire. What do we do? Well, I don't know. What do you think we should do? Well, I don't. Did you bring a hose? I don't know. I think I put the hose on. Well, why don't you go in there and look and see if anybody's okay in the house? Well, I did last time. Why don't you do it? Who made you the boss? Blah, blah, blah. And you're going, oh no, I got the first reactors, not the first responders.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Good image.
So what's the difference?
Yeah.
A first responder trains their whole nervous system
Yeah.
and all kind and their body memory, muscle memory, and everything, whether it's a military person or a firefighter or a cop or working in an emergency room
Yeah.
where there's a lot of drama,
Yeah.
they train themselves to draw a straight line through the drama and stay on it.
Yeah.
Whereas reactors go bing, 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 bing off of
Yeah.
all of the emotional cues,
Yeah.
and so I think that as you age, my hope and my prayer is that you develop that capacity to refine what matters enough to where you can draw lines through crazy
Yeah.
and stay more or less on them and show other people where that line might fall.
And you feel like, or you believe, I should say, that when you're in on the end of the third tunnel, that's a trait that you typically carry.
That's one that I would believe is available.
Yeah.
And that if we valued that and we maybe pointed people in that direction as a goal, like, hey, um, God is leaving you on this earth this long,
Right.
not just to take up space, but to be an elder
Right.
and to show people things like that
Yeah.
that you've had to learn
Yeah.
the hard way
Right.
yourself.
Right.
It's just by life experience and
Totally.
by spiritual maturity.
Yeah. Because obviously you yourself have confronted some life-changing challenges in your life.
Yes.
What were like what was the response you got versus the reaction you got where you're like, oh, that was really meaningfully
Mm,
helpful for me, or
mm.
that really grounded me or settled me or whatever it was that you needed in that moment?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that it's here's an example. This is
Sure.
not my example.
Sure.
This is an example from Jewish culture.
Okay.
In traditional Jewish culture, when a person passes away, the loved ones and friends of that person, who's the survivor,
Hmm.
they come in what's called sit shiva,
Hmm.
which means you come and you sit with
Hmm.
and you attend
Hmm.
and you're available for discussion if the bereaved person wants to talk about
Hmm.
something, but you're not there to to talk to them a
Yeah.
lot or
Right.
to say clever things to
Sure.
them or whatever. You're there to be present.
Right.
So I think that it's the people in the various things that have been big challenges for me that were willing to just be present.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'd give me advice,
Sure.
and sometimes
Sure.
they would direct my attention in some direction or another, or have a prayer with me or whatever. But often it was the people that were just like, we're here.
Yeah.
We
Right.
got you.
Right. Right. Like,
And they don't, and that is what I call the ministry of presence.
yeah.
There is something that cannot be you can't replace that with anything else. And so
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's one of the greatest gifts an older person can
Hmm.
give, an elder can give to younger people is just to be present and be non-anxious, non-reactive,
Hmm.
focused, centered,
Yeah.
and offer that sort of what's the word I'm looking for? That almost aura
Yeah.
excuse me, to others and say, borrow a little of this.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
you don't have to go completely crazy right
Right.
now.
Right. Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, what else do you want to say about?
I think that's a pretty good way for us to start this
Yeah.
conversation. And obviously there'll be things that some of the people that see this will want to ask about, and
Yeah.
maybe down the road we could take some questions
Yeah.
or have some input from others
Yeah.
and see how this hits people. But hopefully that gives us a little map.
Yeah.
So just to review. In adolescence, your project is identity. You go through that first tunnel, and you're coming into the project of competence. As you go through the second tunnel of midlife, you're coming into the project of contribution. I didn't give that a name,
Mm.
but that's the name I think that Bob Buford gives it in Halftime is the project of life's second season, I'll call it that, midlife, is I know how to do stuff. Now, what's my real contribution?
Hmm.
So you get to focus on that a little bit more.
Hmm.
And that's why I went back to, I had already been a pastor for many years, but I wanted to do more, personal work with people. And
Hmm.
so my contribution I felt was in becoming a counselor
Yeah.
and being a kind of a personal pastor to people.
Hmm.
And anyway, contribution is the second season, and then or the second project of adulthood, and then the third project of adulthood I would just call eldership,
Hmm.
or I would call it on the other side of the post midlife tunnel, I'd call that the season of eldership.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Cool.
thank you.
Thank you. This was
And
great.
yeah, and we hope this comes out well. So we'll say goodbye.
See you later.